This is the parts kit I got in the mail the other day. This is an Argentine FMK-3. After the Second World War, Argentina decided they wanted a submachine gun of their own, so they licensed the US M3 grease gun. They licensed the grease gun and built some of their own for a while, but then they decided to make some changes of their own. They wanted a telescoping bolt for a shorter overall length, and they wanted to go with a 9mm round. After some revisions, they came up with the FMK-3 here. Ironically, even though they went with the telescoping bolt, the overall end design is about the same size, it's about the same size as the grease gun. They didn't really save much overall length, even when the stock is telescoped. So the FMK-3 was developed in 1974. About 30,000 were built. The gun weighs 7.5 pounds empty. It has a 11.4-inch barrel and the telescoping bolt. It fired about 650 rounds a minute, which is kind of slow, a little faster than a Sten, I believe. It has a few grease gun, some pieces from the grease gun, and you'll see some similarities to the Uzi too, along with the VZ26. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this. So since this gun is obviously torch cut in the middle, it's missing a big chunk of the receiver, and it's no longer adequately connected to the lower here. Won't be able to do a proper field strip, but you can get the main idea. So I don't have the grips held in place right now. There's just two holes. These are very similar design to the Uzi grips. I'll set those aside, we'll look at them later. So you can see a chunk of the receiver missing here. That's where one grip would go, or one grip screw would go through, and there'd be another lug back here. So this is where it all kind of falls apart. The first thing you would do to field strip this is to take out the barrel and the bolt. Kind of similar to an Uzi, you have a button up here. Then you unthread a barrel nut. There's a lot of threads on this one. Barrel nut comes off, and then this would still be connected to the lower. You have a push pin right here and a push pin back here. Neither of them are actually connecting this whole piece anymore because this is cut right here and this section up here is missing where the lugs go. Here's actually a picture. You can see right there are the missing lugs. So we have that. We even have this, but there's a cut right around there. So you would pull these push pins out. The upper would come off from the lower. See if I can get this one out. I might not bother. Okay, I did bother. I took the pin out. Pretend this is all connected. Then you'd be able to take this out here. See, there's the lugs, so this would kind of go into this recess back here. So now you can move your lower side. Usually you do most of your cleaning with the upper. So if you pretend this is all one complete tube here, the next thing you can do is slide the whole bolt and barrel assembly out the rear of the tube. So now you'd have the receiver and the bolt and barrel assembly. And this is kind of interesting because this right here is all one self-contained unit. You can actually mimic the compression of the spring there. So this is fixed up here in the trunnion. The gun fires, the bolt goes back. So you have the recoil spring and the barrel contained in the bolt, with this bayonet style socket here. So let me see if I can get this on camera. This is really tricky to assemble, so I don't know how bad it's going to be taken apart. Okay, I found out what was holding me up. This is the very end of the coil of the spring, and it was sticking out, keeping me from turning this. So it should come off easy now. So there's a lot of spring force there. So you take that off. The bolt. And you have a kind of a key right here. More about that later. This is the bolt by itself, the barrel, and the spring. And that would be pretty much it for a basic field strip. Your lower is all self-contained. You don't really have to do anything with that. This is a challenge to take apart and put together, but maybe there's a special trick behind it. Okay, so now it's all taken apart. Let's take a look at the individual components. Here's the handguards and their screws. The screws have a very coarse thread, almost like wood screws. And like I said, the handguards are very similar in design to an Uzi. So through on one side with countersinks for the screw heads, and then self-tapping. I assume the screws would self-tap on that the first time they put them on. So that's how that goes on the very front of the gun. And you just put your other one on. And then of course we're missing the rear lug there. Here's the barrel nut. It has a sling swivel attached to it. You'll see the clip there. Let's see, focus. These clips are widely used on this gun for the fire control components. There's some ratcheting teeth right here, similar to an Uzi. Those ratchet teeth engage with that lever. So when you take it off, it puts that down, which lets the ratchet teeth go by. So the barrel nut screws onto these threads on the barrel. And then this surface right here on the barrel goes into the trunnion up here. So move on to the barrel next. So that would go in there, orient it correctly so the feed ramp is on the bottom. That's how that would be, like that in there. And this would thread right on. Lots of threading to do before the ratchet engages. So the barrel on this gun is actually pretty complicated because you have threading up here. You have this surface right here, which actually clamps the whole barrel in place in the trunnion. You have a full feed ramp right there for double stack magazines, extractor cut. You have this outer surface here, rides tightly inside the bolt. And then you have the bolt guide right here, which this little key goes into. So this works something like this. So again, this is a snug fit. That's why I'm kind of struggling to put it together just right. So what this does is you have the barrel indexing, so prevents it from rotating on the front trunnion because of those flats in there. So the barrel is kept upright where it's supposed to be, and then this key here keeps the bolt upright because this bolt has no external charging handle like a Sten. The Sten has like an external nub that sticks out that goes in an external slot in the tube. So instead of having that, the barrel has this little key that keeps the bolt from rotating. See if I can get a view down the bore. It's a nice condition barrel. And again, I haven't measured it, but this is a really tight tolerance. I guess the riding tolerance here is less than maybe 10 thou. It's probably closer around 5 thou. Next we have the bolt. The bolt's unusual because it's actually a two-piece design, which is good for manufacturing. So this whole piece is one piece of tube, and then the secondary piece in here was a piece of round stock. That's pinned together with this pin right here, and a pin that goes through to keep this pin from falling out. And this pin actually doubles as the sear surface for the bolt. So they can replace the sear surface if you want. You have a pin up here for the extractor. The firing pin on the bolt there is fixed, so you can't replace that. Like I said, this is a really smooth, tight surface to that face on the bolt. You have these bayonet socket type cuts up here. And let's see. And that's where that guy goes. It's a lot easier without the spring. So there's a lot of spring force to put in there when you're doing that. This surface right here is where the charging handle engages to pull the bolt back. So there's a sliding charging handle plate, kind of like an Uzi, that goes like this and then pushes the bolt back. Here's our front chunker receiver with part of the charging handle and cover on. This is a little bit tight because it was taken apart when they kitted this. There we go, that's more like it. So up here you have a pin which holds the barrel nut ratchet there. And there's some kind of spring in here to give it a spring force. You got another pin right there. That pin is right there. And there's a spring to return the charging handle to the front. You've got a lug that's welded on. You can see the whole trunnion goes around. I'll take this dust cover off, just because this is loose enough for me to show you. Usually this would be tight, pinned on, you wouldn't be able to do this. So there's a separate nut, so you'd thread this down and then thread the nut and then pin it so it doesn't move. So here's the dust plate, keeps the charging handle slot, keeps it covered and keeps debris out. And then this surface right here is what engages there. Let's see if I can do it. Might be kind of hard. There we go. So I push that, pushes the bolt. And at the same time, that would be covered. Won't see more of it in there, the spring. The front sight is elevation adjustable only. There's a locking nut around the sight post that you have to loosen, and then you can use a tool to bring the sight post up or down and then tighten the locking nut again. And of course you saw the inside rear of the trunnion earlier, and the slot that keeps the barrel oriented. Next we got the rear sight chunker receiver. You have a pretty primitive sling loop on there, just a piece of wire smashed down and spot welded. Cutouts for the sear and the bolt safety down there. Here's the rear sight. You can read the 50 there, 50 meter, 100 meter. Flip. And I like this, you push in. Okay, my memory card filled up. So you see when you press it, there's a spring in there. And you have an alignment right there. So that's how you do your windage. Press in and rotate. And then 2-spot elevation windage. And then you have your front sight elevation to set it the first time. So you can see the receiver, it's got these indentations stamped that minimizes friction for the bolt, and any dirt that gets in there also has a place to go, so it keeps the bolt from getting stuck and adding friction. This is interesting here. It looks like there might have been a serial number or a property mark that was welded over. There's one of the serial numbers and it's welded right there. Here's the rear lug. I don't have the front lug. So that was somewhere like that. You can see it's recessed here to fit in the end cap there. And just a stamped piece of sheet metal here with a bushing. There needs to be a bushing in there because this is the pin. If it didn't have that bushing, it would get stuck as soon as it goes through the first plate. So the bushing lets this spring here slide all the way through until it exits on the other side and pops out, keeps the pin from walking out. Here's the lower. It has a stock pretty similar to a grease gun. Press this button here, lets you extend it. So when you press that button, you can see there's a groove cut in the bar there. Which is what keeps the stock locked out when it meets that groove. And then you have ones back here to keep it in the lock position. You have the end cap right here. This is a piece of rubber. Acts as a bolt buffer. So I didn't get a magazine for it, but the magazines are very similar to an Uzi. They just have different stop points, and you need to cut. If you use an Uzi magazine, catches in the rear. So it's got a, I guess it's called a heel type release. So the whole lower is a stamped 2-piece clamshell style construction welded together. And a sheet metal trigger guard. It has a mag safety, or not a mag safety, a bolt safety there. See those moving down, so those interface with the bottom of the bolt to keep the bolt from going all the way forward if you're not gripping it. So it has safe here. It has semi-auto. You can see the sear just move a little bit each time I click the trigger. And full auto. The sear will drop down and stay down as long as you hold it. So there's no separate disconnector in this. So when you're on semi-auto, it just clicks up and down. Some semi-autos, like the Sten, it'll go down, and then there's a separate trip lever that will let it go back up again. This one doesn't work like that. That was kind of hard to see there, but there's the selector. So we're in semi-auto. And it's disconnecting over that little bump. When you go to full auto, it stays flat. And this is the whole trigger bar moves all the way back to the sear. So here's the drawing, since I can't easily show you. There's the trigger. That bar right there would be the disconnector. There's the selector. And you can see the selector has two flats in it. And depending on what position it's in, those flats interface with that bar on the trigger and the disconnector to either operate in semi-auto or full auto. So there's a spring back there for the trigger bar. You can see they just punched the rear of the housing a little bit to hook the spring there. It's a pretty simple solution. So that's your trigger spring there. So this whole trigger bar moves backwards, which pivots the bottom of the sear, which drops the top of the sear. And of course, our sear surface is right here. So the bolt would be in there. And when you squeeze the trigger, sear goes down, bolt keeps going until you're out of ammo. Here is the ejector sticking out. That's what knocks the round free of the bolt. See my other pin sloppily stuck in there. There's more of those clips for the fire control pins. Although some of them are just roll pins. Another clip, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's the spring for the stock. Push in, it gets compressed. So this button or retainer kind of goes into a shaft, female shaft here, which is what retains that. The grip safety is something I wasn't easily able to show you how it works. So there's its pivot pin. It's got a spring that goes through here. Then this surface right here, so this whole thing pivots on this point. So you squeeze this, goes inward, causing this top to go down. So that all pivots there. And then over here, this is the actual bolt catch. So when that's pivoting down, pushes down on this, which drops these two little ears or fingers. And when those are dropped, the bolt is free and clear to go back and forth, assuming the sear has dropped it. So that's my overview of the FMK-3. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.